have to admit that today I almost canceled doing this video about 4 different times. And then finally when I checked in with Dawn, she's been feeling the same way. And so it gave me that comfort that, okay, we've got each other, this is fine, we've got this, and we're experiencing the same thing. So this is the first time I'm gonna be sharing my origin story and the memories that I hold within my body since I was 5 years old. There's only about 5 people on the planet that know this information, and I've held it back for a few different reasons. I think some of it being just the fear of being too different for other people, or feeling too out there, or scaring others. And as I've been coming closer with other light beings and people who have these memories, I have the courage and the empowerment that it actually is helpful to others to hear this stuff, and then it helps create remembrance in others. So thank you, Dawn, for taking this journey with me. Dawn was in a new video with me, and I found her on a site, on a group page on Facebook where people are very open about their origins. And she had shared a memory, and it really resonated with me. And I said, that we're from a similar place. Gosh, I'm like shaky right now.
Yeah.
Okay. So
right there with you.
yeah. So, you know, Dawn and I, we started a book club together. And it's all around like, what is a light worker? What is a star seed? And working with different crystals to awaken different things and to have support for the work that we're doing on the planet. And we know that we have connections in places, but we haven't openly talked about it. We've kind of like teased about it, that like, yeah, we know each other. But there was a few times when we tried to get together to talk about it, and it just never worked. And so we figured, well, I guess this just needs to be shared, you know, in this format, the first time that we open up about it with each other. Yeah. So my thought, Dawn, is that we can each share some of our memories and, like, I guess, you know, kind of do a time travel from this life incarnation and our experiences in this life, and we can interweave our past history into that, and then we can kind of interject when there's a similarity or something from the other person, and so we can both share our stories in that way, and then kind of like interject and be like, I've had that same experience, or whatever.
Sure.
Okay, so you can go ahead. I'm happy to do it first too, whatever feels right.
That's okay. So you mentioned you had experiences when you were 5 years old. For me, like the spirit world was always, I don't know if it has to do with like how I was raised in my religion, but the spirit world for me always felt really, really close and really tangible. And I looking back now, I realized, oh, I was really picking up on, you know, my aunt that passed away, and I was really feeling her with me. And as a kid, I was really, really quiet, and I lived in my head a lot, and I just always kind of felt different. And we'll come back to that feeling different, because it's really big, important point, I feel, for a lot of people. But as I got older, the feeling different and not fitting in just really became profound. And I distinctly remember, it is a distinct memory of mine, and I will never forget this. I was about 14 years old. I was having a really hard time in high school. And I just remember one night looking out my window and just feeling this, I don't want to cry, this intense pull to the stars. And it was this intense feeling, like I could hear whispering telling me, you don't belong there, you're from out here. And it was just like this surreal experience where I was communicating almost with the stars, or some being out there. And it was so comforting to me to know that, you know, my origin was from somewhere else. And it was, I'm sorry?
How old were you?
I was about 14.
Same.
where yeah, where I distinctly, it was just like fire. It was this explosion, this recognition of, oh, maybe I'm not from here. And I felt so different from my family, so different from just everyone around me. But in that moment of connection, I felt just that peace. And I was like, oh, it was this realization. I had never really, seen anything or felt anything like that. And I distinctly remember looking at the Orion constellation so much. And I would go out, it was particularly when I was 14, I would go out, I would look at the Orion constellation. It was my favorite one, Orion's belt. And it was the one that I could zero in. And I don't know, it just made me so happy when I would look at it. And so to me, that was my first profound experience of understanding. It was like this pull to my heart that something was different and something was out there for me that, and it was just such a comfort at that time.
So I had a similar experience at age 14. I mean, everything started earlier. So age 5 was the first time that I realized I was waiting for my grandfather to come home. And again, the same thing where it's like, this is just etched in my mind.
Right.
Reflection in the window. And I was like playing with something, a train, and waiting for him to come home. And I saw my reflection. And I looked up and I remember distinctly hearing for the first time my soul voice, my internal, the whisper, that voice that isn't part of this body. And it said, oh, here you are again in another form. And I just remember, I don't know, I guess just being so curious and also being like, oh, wow, how fun is this to be a child?
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly telling my grandparents around that age that I wanted to stay that age forever. And be with them, and just be around them all the time. So, and then, so I'll jump forward a bit, I guess, to get to the age 14. So at age 7, I started playing with time dilation. So I understood that I could time jump, like go into different parts of this life. I didn't yet have the awareness that I could jump into other timelines of different lives or different dimensions. So I would jump to different ages that I was at in this form, and I would get, it would only be just like a brief moment experience, and then I would jump back into my body. And so it wasn't like the biggest messages, but whenever I get to that future moment in my body, I jump back to that moment. And so it's like this link, this like wormhole that I create through different timelines.
Yeah.
So that happened at age 7. And then I played with it for a few years. And then it was age 14 as well that I had this extreme call to go out every night. We had this old junk car in the backyard that was there when we bought the place. And we had a big backyard. And I would go sit on the hood every night, and this one star would tell me to look at it.
Yeah.
And so I would sit there, and it felt like I was getting downloads. And a similar thing of like, that I wasn't from here.
Yeah.
That they were telling me, there wasn't clarity on messages at that point. It was just, it felt like a transmission and a download through my retinas.
Wow.
Like my being.
Yeah.
And around that time I started having really like almost psychotic breaks. I was so connected with my dreams, and my dreams were a few days to a month ahead of schedule of like actual life. And so
I see.
not understanding, okay, am I in my dream right now? Am I in real life? Like, which one is it? And I was doing a lot of time jumping as well to try to figure out what was going on and what my powers were. You like saw superhero movies. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm just like a superhero.
Yeah.
And so I didn't really understand what was happening. And then that's when I got clarity that I was going to die soon.
Interesting.
So that was my age 14 similarity.
Mm-hmm.
Which is interesting too, because in Chinese medicine, there's 7-year cycles for females. Age 7, age 14, 21, 28, blah, blah, blah.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. You were talking about where you were at that time, and I'm remembering now the house, because we moved around a lot when we were younger. the house that we were at, where I had that distinct looking out at the stars, we were actually in the middle of the desert, so I could see the stars. Like
Mm.
they, were super bright at that time. So it's interesting.
Did
That's
you
when I
live
really,
in the desert?
I'm sorry?
Did you live in the desert?
Not now, but I did, yeah, at that time.
Where?
In El Paso, Texas, actually.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So it was just out there in a suburb, and yeah, it's pretty amazing that we have such similar.
The same time with stars. I didn't know what my star yet was. I just knew that I would look at the star. It was in between this triangulation, and
Hmm.
I knew it was the same one. So when was your next memory or
My
next?
next memory, well, that kind of continued on through my adolescence. Whenever I was sad or, just feeling depressed, I would find comfort in looking at the moon and the stars. So I spent a lot of time just under the stars and maybe receiving things I didn't really realize I was receiving, but it was just that feeling of connection. But when I really started discovering things was about 3 years ago, when I moved here actually to Washington. And I've thought about this. I don't know if the particular area here, the grid here, the energy here, but it caused this huge awakening in me. But 3 years ago, I was meditating, and I actually had this crystal, which is kind of a funny looking one, but they say that it's got an Isis in it. And when I was meditating with this is when I started seeing memories that I've never really, like, nothing in this earthly plane would equate or give me the kind of vision that I had. And so I realized, wait a minute, I'm having memories of a life I've lived that I've never, never seen before. And
And
so as I started,
meditated with crystals, and I'm not too familiar with that practice either. So do you hold it somewhere on your body? Do you just have it in your hand?
so it's funny because at that time I had purchased this one and a bunch of, because my mentor at that time was like, oh, all about Lemuria. And I was like, I have no idea what Lemuria is, but these crystals, like, they're calling to me and they're really pretty. And so at that time, yeah. And if you look it up now, you will, it's the same thing. The thing about Lemurian crystals is that they carry within themselves codes from their own origins. And what you do is you take your thumb or your finger as you're meditating and you unzip and you unlock the information that it holds in there. And when you do, you meditate, you're able to see what that crystal's holding for you. And so I did that with this one. And this one is where I really started recalling this land of Lemuria that was like this paradise that, you just, something out of, the movies, just so, so beautiful. So,
Oh, hold on, you got muted somehow. There we go. Okay, I can say something.
yeah, sorry, I was getting a
Okay, so
phone
you
call.
hold it and you intentionally say, like I'm unzipping the codes in this to receive information, and then you go into a space where you're trying to clear your own thoughts out and receive information.
Right, and just allow it to show you what it wants to show you. And just, so I always tell people, just kind of relax, and whatever presents itself, don't try to think too hard, or just let it all flow and trust what shows up. Because a lot of times when we see these things, we get freaked out and we're like, oh my gosh, what is this? Which is what I did. I was like, oh my goodness. But when you allow it to just come, and you write it down, and you take, record what you saw, and then your logic, your human mind is able to kind of sit with it and accept it and integrate it, and you're like, oh yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense.
What age was this?
um 3 years ago, 29.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you want to share the vision that you had?
Sure. So I've actually had, I have so many now. It's like they're all coming so fast. Earlier this year, so before I get to the one that I shared with you, earlier this year, I had this experience where I was, I distinctly remember I had reached a really, really high vibration in my body, and I was just so relaxed, and I felt like I landed on Mars. Like it looked like Mars. It was red. It was dirt. It was Mars. And I distinctly remember that I had communication with reptilians, but they were not. They were benevolent, and they told me that they were reptilians, and so they treated me kindly like royalty, and they were, needing to use my energy for something that they were doing, but I did not feel fear in this. That's how I know that it was benevolent. And when I came back down, I was like, oh my gosh, how cool, I had this experience. And it was really interesting, and I enjoy when I have experiences like this. But the one that you're wanting me to talk about, so up until this point, because your human mind is trying to wrap itself around everything, there's always that doubt, right? There's that doubt, like, am I really experiencing these things? Am I just making it up? Am I just like being super imaginative and inventive?
Especially if
But
you're not around other people having the same experiences.
that what?
Especially if you're not around people having similar experiences. And that, part of our intention of today too is to share our experience so that you can either awaken these dormant memories in yourself, or just feel open to them, or to be able to come out into the light if you have had them.
Right. And I distinctly remember someone around that time telling me that, not to feel crazy, because these were remembrances, and it wasn't something like I keep saying, the human mind tries to rationalize, but you really have to like quiet that down, like just get rid of logic for a minute and really open up your mind and allow your mind to be open and receptive to the fact that there are infinite possibilities in our universe. There are infinite galaxies, there are infinite planets with life on them. There's just so much out there that we don't know. It's pretty arrogant for us to feel or think that there's no other life out there, because there is.
I remember in science, I think this was, oh gosh, seventh or eighth grade, and we were watching some program, PBS or whatever, and the room is dark, right? And you're in an institution where you have to like listen to what the teacher says and not ever go against it, right? And I was like a good kid. Like I never ruffled feathers in school. I was like the kid like in the front row, like taking notes. And I distinctly remember we were watching a program, and it's like celestial darkness, and then Earth comes in the thing. It says Earth, the only planet in the whole universe with life. And I remember standing up and saying that is incorrect, and how could you scientifically prove that? And
Yeah.
I had my teacher pause it to have this discussion, because I was also curious, like, how could this show say that, and why would they be teaching us this if there's so much out there we haven't been able to explore? Like, that isn't plausible,
Right.
or even probable, that our this little piece of Earth rotating around a heat source is the only one.
Right.
I always felt very passionate about that, even though I didn't have many people in my life sharing that.
Well, because that's your soul was telling you that, and it went against what you knew to be true. And that's so funny that they would teach that to you. That's a whole nother discussion for a whole nother time. But
Programming, yes.
yeah. So did you want me to talk about the most recent one?
Anything that you're comfortable sharing.
Sure. So, okay, as I was saying, up until this most recent vision I had or experience I had, there was always that lingering doubt of maybe I'm just, off my rocker, maybe I'm just crazy. But the most recent encounter I had, the most recent contact I had, I was laying down, actually, okay, on May 5th, so 5/5/2020 was an intense energy portal. And I distinctly remember waking up at 4:05 a.m. And I had this feeling, this inkling to meditate. So I laid down, got comfortable, put my headphones on, and I just kind of relaxed and allowed, my mind to go wherever it wanted to go. So I ended up like astral projecting my spirit and my soul out into space. And I could see and feel this man elf, this being, this light being who was so real to me, come and perform this like healing on my body, because up until that point I was carrying a lot of really old heavy energy and it just was weighing me down. And I distinctly remember asking when I astral projected, I was like, just help, I just need help, and this beautiful tall blonde elf man, man elf appeared, and he had on, just like Legolas from Lord of the Rings, he had on, just beautiful like middle-aged like medieval times like armor, and was dressed, and he had a green ring on, and he started to wave his hand over my body. And as he was doing that, he was taking, I could see all of the heavy black energy just like dissolving into him, like, like a vacuum, just taking it all in him. And I felt so like rejuvenated when he was doing that. And then he came with a partner, another elf. I couldn't really see her, but I could sense her presence. But I wasn't able to see her, but she was with him. And he would call to her and ask her for crystals. So he started placing crystals in my belly, and then he placed 3 of them in my third eye. And because I've never had this experience before, it was a little bit scary. It was a little bit, kind of shocking and jarring for me, but I continued to relax. And remember, I said, allow things to appear as they come. No matter what we're feeling, just let them appear and let them come. So as I was relaxing, he helped me. I don't know if it was me or him assisting me, but I ended up feeling like I had thrown my soul onto the Andromeda galaxy. And so when I was there, I started remembering bits and pieces of a life from a long time ago. And I'm talking like billions of years ago, really, really long time ago. And I was blue, my being was blue, and everything, like all of the people there were blue, and I looked different and I felt different. And during this particular scene, I was standing next to my king. So in my particular memory, I was a queen and I was ruling over my people, and we were starting to see the beginnings of war come. And I could see, I don't know if it was the bad reptilians or which other alien race, but they came and they were invading our planet. And I was up in the castle, and I can remember like being worried about my people, and it was pretty intense, because I just knew that there's no way I could have seen any of this before in this earthly plane. It was completely from, somewhere deep inside my soul. And so during this time, the man
Yeah, you got muted again.
also showing me and telling me, so telepathically communicating with me, that my soul was ancient, like really, really old, from the beginning of time, old, like billions and billions of years old. And I began to see like Earth, moon, and stars, and planets and galaxies, like just moving in a time lapse. So he was telling me, just these planets and galaxies, they live and they die, just all of these life cycles. And it was really, really interesting to me. So at that point, I started fearing him, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is just so weird. The fear kind of started taking over, because it was a lot. And so he came back, and he, I was still in my laying down position, and he, took my hand and kissed it, and he was like, don't worry, so it was this feeling of, we were like brothers in arms. So he was a different race from me, but together we had defeated, some enemy or something I did in a previous life, that he would, you know, forever be serving me and helping me in this lifetime. And so I was like, okay, I'm not afraid anymore. Thank you. You know, thank you for that. And so then when I finally, you know, that encounter was, you know, coming to a close, I could feel my soul coming back into my earth body, and I could feel the heaviness of gravity, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so heavy here.
Mhm.
And so it was pretty amazing to have that experience, and that experience has eliminated all doubt in me. So I no longer doubt whether or not I am, you know, what my origins are. I know now, no matter, you know, if it's Andromeda or, you know, Sirius or Orion, I know for a fact now that I lived other lives on other planets, because that's what he told me. And he came, you know, to me to tell me that, and to fix me up and to help me, you know, receive the help that I needed in order to continue on my journey here. And so I find it so interesting that they will appear to you when you need them the most.
When you're ready to receive.
Yeah.
And with, you know, when you said that you saw all the solar systems in a time lapse, does that mean, are you seeing it as like, because one of the things that I at least philosophically play with is that we are all in the same timeline, like in a loop. So like the
Yeah.
big thing comes, expands, collapses, and we're kind of like re-experiencing a billion years, a trillion, billion, quadrillion years over and over again.
So one thing he said was, so he told me the reason why I was sent to Earth and why so many of us came here is because our galaxy, the Milky Way, and Earth herself are really, really young in comparison to all of the other galaxies and all of the other planets. And so because we've lived these lives on other planets and helped them evolve to their fullest potential, it is our job now to come here and help Earth continue to evolve and grow to her potential. And yes, I definitely feel that that's pretty accurate, that these life cycles, it is the same, you know, timeline just over and over again. I would
Right.
agree with that. Yeah.
I mean, and for me too, it's always important for me to take a step back when I have my own memories and realize that we all truly are the same thing. Like,
Right.
I mean, science is pretty conclusive that the Big Bang was all these molecules
Right.
together, right? That
Mhm.
is exploding out and expanding. And so truly we're the same molecules, we're the same consciousness, we're the same source going into these fingers of difference to have different experiences, right? And so it's interesting to me of like, why do I have these particular memories, you know, and like why wouldn't another if we're all the same thing? So I don't know, I think about that a lot. Um, let's see, something else your story reminded me of. Um, I don't know. This is all just, it's so fun to hear your experience. Yeah, I think that, you know, I questioned it for a very long time as well. And part of me trusting was me hearing from others. And then just recently, I also had a experience that really solidified that there's no question for me now. It's like you get hit with the bulldozer and then
Yeah.
you're going back. You know, there is no, oh, well, maybe I made it up. You know, it's like, it's just so concrete that there's nothing.
Right.
Okay, so I'll go back into some of my stuff. So age 14, I was having all of this stuff, all this time jumping. Have you ever seen the movie The Arrival?
The
Oh
Arrival.
my God, it's so good.
Yes.
It's like
Yes. Was that the one? I think I just recently saw it. Yep.
it's like all the ships that come at different points of the planet. No one knows
Yeah.
what's going on. They're just sitting there. They're not doing anything. And then the
Hmm.
woman is time jumping the whole movie.
Right.
That's so after I watched that movie, I cried for like half an hour and then I played it again because I had
Oh,
never